Imagine waking up one morning to discover that your most private family secrets, the ones you believed were locked away behind palace walls, have been exposed to the world. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates now. Imagine the person responsible for this revelation is none other than your own sibling, someone you grew up with, someone you trusted implicitly. This is not the plot of a thriller movie. This is the explosive reality facing Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, as shocking claims have emerged that Prince William, his elder brother and heir to the throne, publicly exposed the most intimate and controversial details about Meghan Markle, Harry's wife, and her alleged attempt to seduce him inside Buckingham Palace. Within the gilded walls of one of the most scrutinized royal residences in the world, a scandal of unimaginable proportions has erupted, one that threatens not just family bonds but also the very image of the British monarchy. The story begins with whispers, rumors that started in hushed conversations among palace aides and senior staff, conversations that no one thought would ever leave the ornate corridors of the palace. Rumors about Meghan Markle, her charm, her influence, and now, a claim so startling it sent shockwaves through the royal family. An alleged seduction attempt aimed not at an outsider, but at someone inside the palace itself. The alleged victim, as the story goes, is none other than Prince William. The timing, according to insiders, could not have been more sensitive. The monarchy was already grappling with international scrutiny, media storms, and questions about succession, family loyalty, and the public image of the royal household. Then the unthinkable happened. The story was leaked. The leak has not just rattled the corridors of power within Buckingham Palace, but it has ignited a firestorm in the media, on social platforms, and across royal-watching communities worldwide. Prince Harry, already burdened by the weight of public scrutiny and decades of intense media coverage, was blindsided. For a man who had fought tirelessly to protect his wife from tabloid intrusion, to suddenly have intimate and potentially damaging details about her actions and his own family laid bare was beyond comprehension. According to sources close to the Duke of Sussex, Harry's initial response was a mix of disbelief and anger, emotions that quickly escalated into a decision that could redefine the relationship between the two brothers. A threat to sue Prince William. To understand the gravity of the situation, one must appreciate the palace as more than a residence. It is a fortress of protocol, secrecy, and hierarchy. Every action, every word spoken within its walls is expected to adhere to centuries-old traditions. Any deviation risks scandal, public outrage, or worse, the erosion of trust within the monarchy itself. And yet, despite these stringent codes, the alleged events occurred. A purportedly clandestine encounter involving Meghan Markle, the Duke of Cambridge, and the tension-filled atmosphere that surrounds any interaction between royal siblings and their spouses. The implications are immense. It raises questions about personal boundaries, the ethics of disclosure, and the fragility of family loyalty when wealth, power, and public perception are at stake. Sources claim that Prince William, after the alleged incident, struggled with the weight of the information. For months, palace staff observed a subtle but noticeable shift in his demeanor, moments of hesitation, whispered discussions with advisors, and eventually, a breaking point that led to the exposure of the incident. The decision to go public with the story, or to share it with close confidants who then leaked it to the media, reflects a complex mix of motivations. Anger, betrayal, a desire to protect the integrity of the monarchy, or perhaps even an unspoken rivalry that has simmered beneath the surface for years. For Harry, this act is not just a personal betrayal. It is a calculated move that strikes at the heart of family loyalty, challenging the very notion of trust that should define sibling relationships. The palace staff, already accustomed to the delicate dance of protocol, found themselves caught in the crossfire. Conversations that were once routine became high-stakes deliberations, as aides and advisors scrambled to contain the fallout. The media, sensing a monumental story, descended with relentless intensity. Headlines screamed allegations of impropriety, betrayal, and scandal, painting a narrative that was as dramatic as it was damaging. Social media erupted, fans and critics alike debating the veracity of the claims, dissecting every image, every public appearance, and every historical anecdote for clues. The ripple effects were instantaneous, affecting not just the immediate family but the global perception of the British monarchy as a whole. Meanwhile, Prince Harry faced a profound personal dilemma. His love for Meghan Markle, his loyalty to his family, and his desire to maintain dignity in the public eye collided in a perfect storm of emotional turmoil. Reports indicate that he immediately consulted with his legal team, weighing the options for formal action against his elder brother. The threat to sue is not just a reactionary move. It is a strategic and symbolic gesture, signaling that Harry is prepared to defend his family's privacy and challenge the actions of those he once considered allies. It is a declaration that boundaries have been crossed, and that betrayal, even within the family, has consequences. The alleged seduction attempt itself adds another layer of intrigue. It is a scenario that is equal parts sensational and disturbing, one that challenges conventional expectations of royal decorum. Meghan Markle, known for her poise, charm, and media-savvy persona, is now at the center of allegations that go beyond the typical scrutiny faced by public figures. The story suggests not only a breach of trust but also a manipulation of intimate circumstances within the palace, a move that has far-reaching implications for both her public image and her private life. It is this combination of personal scandal and institutional risk that makes the situation so explosive. To fully appreciate the magnitude of this unfolding drama, one must also consider the broader historical context. The British royal family has weathered numerous storms, from marital controversies to publicized disputes between siblings. Yet rarely has there been an incident that combines personal betrayal, alleged sexual impropriety, and potential legal action in such a high-profile and immediate manner. The delicate balance between public duty and private loyalty is being tested in real time, with the world watching every response, every statement, and every subtle gesture for signs of fracture or reconciliation. Public reaction has been swift and polarized. Royal enthusiasts, social commentators, and casual observers have taken to various platforms to express shock, disbelief, and in some cases, support for one sibling over the other. Hashtags trend within hours, debates erupt, and memes proliferate, turning what might have once been a private family matter into a global spectacle. The court of public opinion, with its instantaneous reach and unfiltered commentary, adds pressure to a situation already fraught with tension. Every tweet, every article, every leaked photograph becomes part of the narrative, further complicating the possibilities for resolution or reconciliation. In the midst of this chaos, the question remains: how will this family navigate the storm? The Duke of Sussex's threat to sue his elder brother is not merely a legal maneuver. It is a statement about the boundaries of trust, the limits of loyalty, and the consequences of betrayal. It forces the monarchy to confront uncomfortable questions about privacy, integrity, and the vulnerabilities that even the most protected families face. It challenges long-standing traditions of silence and discretion, pushing the royal household into unprecedented territory where personal grievances and public scrutiny intersect. As we delve deeper into this story, viewers can expect a detailed exploration of the alleged events, the personalities involved, and the fallout that continues to reverberate through Buckingham Palace and beyond. We will examine the motivations behind Prince William's decision to expose the story, Prince Harry's emotional and strategic responses, and the broader implications for the monarchy. Along the way, we will hear from experts, insiders, and observers who provide insight into the complexities of royal life, the weight of public expectation, and the delicate balance between personal loyalty and institutional duty. This introduction sets the stage for a dramatic narrative that combines the tension of family betrayal, the intrigue of alleged seduction, and the high stakes of public exposure. The next sections of the video will unravel the story piece by piece, examining the events, reactions, and potential consequences in meticulous detail. Viewers will gain an intimate understanding of the human emotions, strategic calculations, and historical context that underpin this scandal, creating a narrative that is both compelling and emotionally resonant. By the end of this video, you will understand not just what allegedly happened within the walls of Buckingham Palace, but also why it matters to the individuals involved, to the royal family, and to a public captivated by drama that blends history, power, and betrayal. The stage is set for a story that is unprecedented in its audacity and scope, and as we proceed, the tension will only build, revealing the choices, conflicts, and consequences that have brought the monarchy to a moment of unprecedented reckoning. The atmosphere inside Buckingham Palace changed almost instantaneously the moment the rumors began circulating. A place accustomed to rigid protocol, carefully choreographed public appearances, and an unspoken code of discretion suddenly found itself rattled by a storm of unprecedented intensity. Palace aides whispered in corridors once silent with tradition, advisors scrambled to assess the fallout, and members of the extended royal household cast nervous glances at one another, unsure how to navigate a scandal that threatened both personal relationships and the monarchy's carefully curated image. The incident, as it would soon be reported to the press, had not only captured the attention of the palace staff but was poised to ignite a global media frenzy. Sources indicate that Prince William, the Duke of Cambridge, became the central figure in this unfolding drama almost by accident. Trusted aides and courtiers reported subtle shifts in his behavior in the days following the alleged incident. Meetings that were once routine stretched into tense consultations. Phone calls, previously brief and transactional, became longer and filled with pauses, as William sought counsel on whether to contain the story within family walls or take decisive action that would inevitably leak into the public domain. Every decision carried weight. Every disclosure risked transforming a personal conflict into a spectacle watched by millions worldwide. Meanwhile, Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, was blindsided. Known for his fierce protection of his wife, Meghan Markle, and for his careful, though sometimes impulsive, handling of media scrutiny, Harry was reportedly stunned to learn that such an intimate and potentially damaging story had emerged. Trusted friends described him as oscillating between disbelief and outrage, a man who had spent years defending his family's privacy, now facing an internal betrayal of the highest magnitude. The alleged exposure by his own brother, a sibling he had once relied upon for support and counsel, was more than a personal affront. It was a violation of every expectation of familial loyalty and discretion. Inside the palace, the reactions of staff ranged from concern to outright panic. Senior aides convened emergency meetings to discuss how to manage the rumor and the initial media response. Some suggested immediate containment, appealing to discretion and silence, while others argued for a proactive strategy, anticipating that the story would inevitably leak. Security personnel intensified their monitoring of sensitive communications, and palace communications officers drafted statements and contingency plans. It was a delicate balancing act, maintaining decorum, managing the personal dynamics of two brothers in conflict, and preparing for the inevitable global attention that would follow. Observers noted that the dynamics between William and Harry, already complicated by years of public scrutiny, sibling rivalry, and personal differences, reached a new level of tension. The palace, accustomed to navigating disputes discreetly, was suddenly forced to confront the reality that even the closest of family ties were vulnerable to exposure and public judgment. Sources close to the dukes described private meetings in which William explained, in his own words, why he felt compelled to reveal the alleged incident, citing a combination of frustration, anger, and what he perceived as a need to protect the integrity of the royal household. Harry, according to these same sources, viewed the disclosure as a deliberate provocation, a breach of trust so severe that legal action was immediately considered. Media outlets, sensing the enormity of the story, descended with the urgency of a global news event. Headlines screamed allegations of impropriety, sibling betrayal, and palace scandal. Social media platforms exploded with speculation, commentary, and debate, creating a digital maelstrom that mirrored the tensions inside Buckingham Palace. Every tweet, every post, every comment became a piece of the narrative puzzle, further complicating the palace's efforts to manage the situation and maintain public composure. For Harry and William, the personal and the public had collided in an uncontrollable way, leaving them to navigate a delicate and highly charged environment. The fallout extended beyond the two brothers themselves. Extended family members, once confident in the strength of their bonds, were forced to confront uncomfortable questions about loyalty, privacy, and discretion. Cousins, in-laws, and even long-serving staff members found themselves navigating a maze of alliances and divided loyalties. Conversations that were previously casual now carried weight, as every remark could be interpreted as support, criticism, or complicity in a scandal that was rapidly escalating beyond anyone's control. Even senior advisors, experts in protocol and public relations, admitted that the intensity of this fallout was unprecedented, challenging the very structures that had long maintained the monarchy's stability. In parallel, rumors began to swirl about the alleged motivations behind William's decision to expose the incident. Some insiders suggested that frustration with ongoing secrecy and perceived manipulation by Meghan Markle played a role, while others cited the pressure of constant media scrutiny and a desire to protect the institution itself. For Harry, these motivations mattered little compared to the personal sense of betrayal he felt. Sources close to him describe long nights of reflection, calls with confidants, and consultations with lawyers to explore every possible course of action. The idea that he might take legal action against his own brother was not simply reactionary. It was strategic, a means to assert boundaries and protect the integrity of his family's privacy. The human impact of the scandal cannot be overstated. Emotional strain, stress, and a sense of vulnerability permeated the palace walls. Staff who had spent decades serving the monarchy found themselves caught between loyalty to the institution and empathy for the personal pain of the individuals involved. Meetings that had previously focused on ceremonial duties and administrative matters now revolved around damage control, conflict mediation, and risk assessment. Every decision, every statement, and every interaction carried implications that extended far beyond the palace gates. Perhaps most significant was the way in which this scandal illuminated the fragility of trust, even among those with shared history, common experiences, and familial bonds. The alleged exposure of Meghan Markle's actions, combined with Harry's threat to sue, transformed a personal matter into a high-stakes test of loyalty, reputation, and resilience. The palace, the brothers, and the extended royal family were now engaged in a delicate dance of strategy, emotion, and public perception. Observers noted that while royal history is replete with disputes and controversies, rarely has there been a situation in which private betrayal intersected so dramatically with public accountability. By the end of the first week following the alleged revelation, Buckingham Palace was in a state of controlled chaos. Security measures had been tightened, statements were drafted, and the media was being carefully monitored, yet the human element remained volatile. Harry, Meghan, and William navigated private discussions and legal consultations, each decision weighted with the potential for further escalation. Advisors worked tirelessly to manage appearances and maintain a semblance of order, while the public watched with rapt attention, aware that the events unfolding within the palace could redefine relationships, reputations, and the future trajectory of the monarchy itself. As we move forward into the next chapters, it is essential to remember that the royal family, despite its wealth, tradition, and privilege, is not immune to the very human experiences of trust, betrayal, and the struggle to reconcile personal relationships with public responsibilities. The alleged exposure, the subsequent emotional fallout, and the threat of legal action against a sibling illustrate the extraordinary pressures faced by those living in the most scrutinized family in the world. They also provide a compelling lens through which to explore broader themes of loyalty, secrecy, and the delicate balance between personal integrity and institutional duty. The royal fallout, in essence, is more than a story of scandal. It is a narrative of human emotion, decision-making under pressure, and the consequences of actions that reverberate far beyond the private sphere. The tension, the drama, and the uncertainty set the stage for the events that will unfold in the following chapters, each revealing more about the personalities involved, the stakes at play, and the choices that will determine not only the relationships within the family but also the perception of the monarchy in the eyes of the world. Buckingham Palace, for all its grandeur and history, is a place where every gesture, every glance, and every whispered word carries meaning. Within these walls, tradition and protocol govern daily life, and the expectation of discretion is absolute. It is against this backdrop that the alleged seduction attempt by Meghan Markle reportedly occurred, a claim that has sent shockwaves through the royal family and captivated public attention. To understand the gravity of the situation, one must first appreciate the intimate dynamics of palace life and the pressures faced by its residents. The interactions between members of the royal family are rarely casual. Every movement is calculated, every engagement scrutinized, and the stakes, both personal and institutional, are extraordinarily high. The alleged timing of the event is particularly significant. At the time, tensions within the family were reportedly already elevated, stemming from previous disagreements, differences in opinion about public duties, and the ongoing scrutiny faced by both Harry and Meghan in the media. Palace insiders suggest that Meghan's alleged actions were not isolated but occurred within a context of complex relational dynamics, including rivalry, perceived favoritism, and attempts to assert influence. Observers familiar with the palace's inner workings describe a delicate psychological landscape, where gestures and words carry layered meanings, and where every personal action is intertwined with broader family and public considerations. In this light, the alleged seduction attempt is not merely a sensational anecdote. It is a potential trigger for a cascade of emotional, relational, and reputational consequences. Prince William, according to sources, was immediately aware of the implications of the alleged encounter. Unlike members of the public, who might interpret behavior in isolation, William's perspective was shaped by decades of experience navigating royal life, an acute understanding of public perception, and a deep awareness of family expectations. The alleged behavior, interpreted through this lens, became more than a private misstep. It became a challenge to the implicit codes of conduct that govern palace interactions. For William, the situation presented a dilemma: how to respond to what he perceived as a breach of trust while maintaining both personal integrity and loyalty to the monarchy. The tension between discretion and action, between silence and exposure, would prove central to the unfolding scandal. Palace aides who were reportedly nearby at the time described subtle signs of tension. Meetings that were expected to proceed smoothly were interrupted by whispered exchanges, careful monitoring of body language, and an acute awareness of presence and attention. The environment, usually disciplined and formal, became charged with unspoken anxieties. The alleged seduction, while not overtly public, created ripples through the palace staff, affecting mood, workflow, and interpersonal dynamics. Long-serving members of the household noted a heightened sense of alertness, as if everyone was aware that something extraordinary had occurred, something that could not easily be contained. The psychology of proximity and perception, especially within such a historically loaded setting, amplified the significance of the alleged actions. Questions about motive inevitably arise. Why, insiders speculate, would Meghan allegedly engage in behavior of this nature? Some sources suggest it was a strategic move, a way to assert influence or establish leverage in family matters. Others posit that it was driven by personal dynamics, emotions, or a desire to test boundaries within a high-pressure environment. Whatever the intent, the effect was immediate: a disruption in the equilibrium of palace relationships and the planting of seeds of tension that would later explode into public controversy. The palace, a place built on centuries of tradition and decorum, found itself confronting a situation that challenged assumptions about propriety, trust, and familial loyalty. The alleged encounter also highlights the complex interplay of public and private life faced by members of the royal family. For Meghan Markle, every personal action is observed through the lens of media scrutiny and public opinion. A gesture or comment, intended or perceived, becomes subject to widespread interpretation, debate, and judgment. In this case, the alleged seduction was not only a private family matter, but also a potential catalyst for a narrative that would dominate international headlines. The pressures of such dual visibility, intimate privacy versus global scrutiny, exacerbate emotional responses and complicate decision-making, particularly when reputations, relationships, and institutional legacies are on the line. For Prince William, the response to the alleged incident was equally complex. Balancing personal feelings with duty, he reportedly navigated a series of consultations with advisors, legal experts, and trusted confidants. Every potential course of action carried consequences. Silence could be interpreted as tolerance or complicity, while disclosure risked family conflict, media escalation, and reputational damage. The decision to ultimately expose the incident, according to sources, was influenced by a combination of ethical reasoning, strategic calculation, and a desire to assert boundaries within the palace. It was, in essence, a move designed to protect both personal integrity and institutional stability, though it came with the risk of deepening the rift with his brother. The emotional impact on Prince Harry was profound. Known for his protective instincts toward Meghan and his sensitivity to issues of trust and loyalty, Harry reportedly experienced a complex mixture of anger, disbelief, and dismay upon learning of the exposure. Friends and insiders describe intense private discussions, sleepless nights, and urgent consultations with legal counsel as he sought to determine how best to respond. The idea that his brother might have deliberately disclosed such sensitive information was viewed not merely as a familial betrayal, but as an affront to the principles of loyalty and confidentiality that underpin personal and institutional trust. The threat to sue, then, emerges not only as a legal consideration but also as a symbolic assertion of boundaries, a statement that personal violation has consequences, and that betrayal, even within the family, cannot go unchecked. Media speculation and public reaction compounded the tension. Headlines, social media commentary, and global news coverage magnified the incident, creating a feedback loop that heightened pressure on all parties. The alleged seduction became a touchstone for discussions of propriety, gender dynamics, and power within one of the most scrutinized families in the world. Analysts debated motives, psychologists discussed relational dynamics, and public opinion fractured along lines of loyalty, skepticism, and fascination. In this environment, the personal and the public were inseparable, and every subsequent action by Meghan, Harry, or William was interpreted as part of a larger narrative, scrutinized for signs of guilt, defensiveness, or strategic calculation. The palace, meanwhile, faced a critical moment of internal decision-making. Advisors, courtiers, and staff were tasked with managing both the immediate fallout and the potential long-term implications. Strategies for containment, communication, and mediation were implemented with urgency, reflecting the dual pressures of private reconciliation and public accountability. Long-serving palace officials emphasized the unprecedented nature of the situation, noting that while family disputes are not uncommon, the combination of alleged seduction, sibling exposure, and media amplification represented a singularly complex challenge. Ultimately, the alleged seduction attempt and its exposure set the stage for a dramatic series of events that would reshape relationships within the royal family. The tension between personal desire and institutional duty, the collision of private behavior with public scrutiny, and the confrontation of loyalty with betrayal created a narrative that is both riveting and deeply human. It is a story not just of scandal but of emotional complexity, strategic maneuvering, and the profound challenges faced by individuals living under extraordinary visibility and pressure. As we move into the next chapters, we will explore the precise moments when Prince William disclosed the alleged incident, the reactions of staff and family members, and the escalating conflict between the brothers. Viewers will gain insight into the emotional stakes, the strategic considerations, and the human vulnerabilities that define this unprecedented royal drama, preparing them for the full depth of revelations and consequences that follow. The decision to speak out was not one Prince William arrived at lightly. In the world of royalty, discretion is the currency of trust, and the choice to expose a family secret is fraught with implications far beyond the immediate parties involved. For William, this was a moment where personal conviction collided with public responsibility. According to insiders, The Duke of Cambridge spent countless hours weighing the potential consequences. The personal fallout with his brother, the impact on Meghan Markle, and the broader perception of the monarchy both domestically and internationally. Every step was measured, every consultation deliberate, and yet the decision carried an irreversibly public weight. Sources close to the palace recount that William's first private acknowledgement of the alleged incident came during an internal meeting with senior aides. The atmosphere was tense. Advisors leaned in, sensing the gravity of the moment. William reportedly spoke in a controlled but firm voice, outlining the series of events as he perceived them. He emphasized his concern not merely with personal affront but with the integrity of the royal household. Every word he chose, insiders say, reflected a careful balance. He needed to express his perspective without unnecessarily inflaming public opinion or provoking legal action. Yet even in this controlled environment, the stakes were extraordinarily high. The initial disclosure did not remain contained. In the weeks that followed, information gradually made its way to select journalists, some of whom had established trust with palace officials over decades. William's reasoning, according to these sources, was multifaceted. There was the personal element, a sense of betrayal and frustration at the perceived manipulation within the family. There was the institutional element, an imperative to safeguard the reputation and continuity of the monarchy. And there was a psychological element, an internal need to assert boundaries and convey that certain actions, even within family, would not go unacknowledged. These motivations created a complex tapestry, one that would define both the narrative and the subsequent reactions from Harry and Meghan. The palace staff quickly noticed the ripple effects of William's decision. Courtiers, security personnel, and senior aides became acutely aware that what had previously been a private matter was on the brink of public exposure. Conversations that had once been routine were now scrutinized for potential leaks. Staff members reported increased anxiety and vigilance, as though every interaction carried the possibility of revealing more than intended. The palace, known for its disciplined hierarchy and unspoken rules, was suddenly navigating uncharted territory where loyalty, confidentiality, and media scrutiny collided in unpredictable ways. For Prince Harry, the revelation was both shocking and deeply personal. Friends and confidants describe his reaction as a combination of disbelief, anger, and hurt. Harry, who had worked tirelessly to shield his wife from media intrusion, found himself confronting not only the alleged exposure of intimate details, but the very real possibility that his brother had chosen to act against him in a way that could have lasting consequences. Legal consultations reportedly began almost immediately, as Harry's team assessed options ranging from mediation to formal lawsuits. The threat of legal action added yet another layer of tension, transforming a family dispute into a potential courtroom battle with the world watching. The media, once informed of the disclosure, reacted with predictable intensity. Headlines immediately framed the narrative in stark, sensational terms. Allegations of seduction, sibling betrayal, and palace scandal dominated coverage. Social media erupted, with commentators, royal enthusiasts, and casual observers alike debating motives, credibility, and consequences. Memes proliferated, hashtags trended, and public opinion polarized. The very act of disclosure had amplified the story far beyond the confines of the palace, creating a feedback loop that intensified pressure on every member of the royal family. Every statement, gesture, and appearance became subject to interpretation, scrutiny, and speculation. William's public stance, though carefully measured, was not without consequence. Advisors noted that the act of disclosure reshaped relationships within the palace. Some members of the extended family reportedly expressed concern, questioning the wisdom of making private matters public. Others appeared to support the decision, citing the importance of transparency and the need to assert ethical boundaries. Staff members, already accustomed to navigating complex interpersonal dynamics, found themselves in a heightened state of alert, balancing discretion with the need to respond to an increasingly volatile situation. The palace, in essence, was operating under a new paradigm. Private family conflicts were now inseparable from public perception and global attention. The timing of William's disclosure also added to the complexity. Occurring in a period already marked by media scrutiny and institutional challenges, the revelation acted as a catalyst for multiple cascading effects. Discussions within the palace shifted from routine scheduling and ceremonial planning to crisis management and damage control. Security protocols were reviewed, communication strategies reassessed, and contingency plans drafted. Every decision was now informed by the knowledge that the public and media were not only aware of the allegations but actively constructing their own narratives around them. The interplay between fact, perception, and rumor became central to the palace's internal strategy. Observers have noted that William's approach combined both emotional reasoning and strategic calculation. On one hand, the disclosure reflected genuine frustration and concern for personal boundaries and family integrity. On the other hand, it served as a strategic signal, reinforcing that certain behaviors, no matter how subtle or indirect, would not go unacknowledged. This duality, emotional and strategic, illustrates the nuanced considerations faced by senior royals operating under constant scrutiny. Every choice carries multiple layers of consequence, affecting relationships, public perception, and institutional stability. Harry's response, in turn, underscored the profound personal stakes involved. The alleged seduction attempt, coupled with William's disclosure, created a situation in which private grievance and public scandal were inseparable. Reports indicate that Harry engaged in intensive discussions with legal advisors, weighing the merits of a lawsuit, potential outcomes, and the impact on family relationships. For the Duke of Sussex, the calculus was not purely legal. It was deeply personal, touching on loyalty, trust, and the enduring complexities of sibling relationships. The threat to sue, therefore, emerges as both a defensive strategy and a symbolic assertion of boundaries. The emotional landscape of the palace during this period cannot be overstated. Staff, advisors, and family members navigated a delicate balance of empathy, loyalty, and duty. Conversations were conducted with heightened awareness of tone, phrasing, and potential consequences. Every interaction was scrutinized for signs of bias, allegiance, or complicity. The combination of personal grievance, familial expectation, and institutional responsibility created an environment of acute tension, one in which every word spoken or withheld carried significance. As the news of William's disclosure reached broader audiences, the narrative began to crystallize in public perception. Analysts, journalists, and royal commentators offered interpretations ranging from calculated familial strategy to simple acts of personal defense. The story's resonance was amplified by its human elements: betrayal, ethical boundaries, sibling rivalry, and the challenge of balancing personal and institutional integrity. These universal themes, juxtaposed against the extraordinary context of the British monarchy, created a compelling story that captivated audiences worldwide. Ultimately, William's decision to speak out set the stage for a profound escalation of tension within the royal family. By exposing the alleged incident, he not only asserted his perspective, but also compelled Harry and Meghan to respond in ways that would have lasting consequences. The palace, the public, and the media were now fully engaged in a narrative that blended personal conflict, institutional duty, and global attention. Every subsequent decision by the brothers would be interpreted through the lens of this disclosure, creating a dynamic of interwoven emotional, strategic, and reputational stakes. The unfolding drama serves as a case study in the intersection of private relationships and public accountability. The act of disclosure, particularly within a family of such visibility and influence, demonstrates how personal choices can trigger cascading effects that extend far beyond the immediate parties. For William, the decision to speak out was a calculated risk, balancing the imperatives of personal integrity, institutional responsibility, and relational dynamics. For Harry, the disclosure represents a profound challenge, one that tests both his emotional resilience and his strategic acumen. As we proceed to the next chapter, the focus will shift to Prince Harry's reaction in more detail, exploring the emotional, legal, and strategic considerations that shaped his response. Viewers will gain insight into the personal stakes, the potential repercussions of family conflict in the public eye, and the intricate dance of loyalty, discretion, and accountability that defines life within one of the world's most scrutinized families. For Prince Harry, The revelation was more than a headline, more than a rumor. It was a personal shock that cut deep into his sense of loyalty, family, and trust. Growing up alongside Prince William, Harry had always relied on his older brother for guidance, protection, and camaraderie. While the public often sees the polished appearances, the smiles on red carpet events, and the carefully choreographed royal engagements, behind the scenes the bond between the brothers was complex, layered with rivalry, mutual support, and deep, if sometimes strained, affection. To learn that William had taken it upon himself to expose one of the most intimate and sensitive matters involving Meghan Markle was, according to insiders, akin to a betrayal of the most personal kind. Harry reportedly felt a wave of disbelief first, a sense that what he was hearing could not be real, that there must be some miscommunication, some misunderstanding that would eventually resolve itself. But disbelief quickly gave way to a profound sense of anger. The anger was not just about William's action but about the implications of it. Sources report that Harry's initial reactions were private, internal, and intense. He reportedly spent long hours pacing, reflecting on the situation, and trying to assess the veracity of what had been disclosed. Calls were made to Meghan, who was in California at the time, and the two reportedly discussed the implications and potential strategies. The discussions were intense, emotional, and at times fraught with tension. Both Harry and Meghan were acutely aware that any misstep could escalate the scandal further, both legally and publicly. The challenge was not simply to manage personal emotions, but to navigate a situation where public exposure, legal risk, and family dynamics intersected in a way rarely seen in modern history. Consultations with trusted allies and advisors became a priority almost immediately. Legal teams were assembled, and a thorough review of potential avenues for recourse began. Harry's advisors reportedly explored a range of options, from private mediation and formal complaints within palace channels to the possibility of initiating legal proceedings against William. The threat of a lawsuit, though drastic, was not merely reactionary. It represented an assertion of boundaries, an attempt to communicate that certain actions, particularly those involving the exposure of private family matters, had consequences. The legal dimension added a level of complexity to the emotional turmoil, blending personal grievance with strategic consideration. Emotional support from friends and confidants played a critical role during this period. Harry reportedly leaned on a small circle of trusted allies who offered perspective, guidance, and reassurance. These conversations often revolved around the delicate balance between family loyalty and personal integrity, the ethical implications of potential legal action, and the broader impact on public perception. Each discussion reinforced the tension at the heart of the scandal, the collision of private emotional experiences with the public responsibilities and visibility inherent in being a senior member of the royal family. Harry was not only confronting a sibling's perceived betrayal but also a potential media storm that could shape narratives for years to come. The emotional landscape of this period was further complicated by the historical context of Harry's life. Having grown up under intense media scrutiny, witnessing the fallout of his mother's death, and enduring public criticism and tabloid sensationalism, Harry's capacity for handling personal betrayal was already tested. The alleged exposure of Meghan's actions represented not just a family conflict but a continuation of patterns of intrusion and misrepresentation that had long defined his experiences. The emotional intensity was therefore heightened, intertwining past trauma, present betrayal, and future uncertainty. Insiders note that Harry's responses reflected both a protective instinct and a strategic mindset, as he navigated the turbulent intersection of personal loyalty and public accountability. Within Buckingham Palace, staff began to notice subtle shifts in the Duke of Sussex's demeanor as the news reached him. Courtiers described increased intensity in phone calls, more urgent discussions with advisors, and a heightened awareness of potential leaks. The palace, accustomed to routine and discretion, became a place of tension and hypervigilance. Every interaction, every conversation, was framed by the knowledge that Harry and William were now engaged in a high-stakes personal and strategic contest, with the added weight of public scrutiny amplifying the consequences. The dynamics of power, influence, and trust within the royal family were being tested in unprecedented ways. Friends close to Harry also report a sense of profound frustration at the perceived injustice of the situation. The alleged seduction attempt, and its disclosure, was interpreted as a violation not only of personal boundaries but also of ethical standards. Harry reportedly felt that the integrity of the family's private life had been compromised, leaving him with a choice: to accept the breach silently or to assertively respond in a manner that conveyed both personal indignation and public accountability. The decision to threaten legal action represents a deliberate and considered response, blending emotional reaction with strategic foresight. It was, in effect, a declaration that betrayal, even within the highest echelons of family, would not be ignored. Public reaction further intensified the emotional stakes. Social media platforms, news outlets, and royal commentators dissected every reported detail, creating a feedback loop that reinforced the gravity of the situation. Each headline, each online discussion, added pressure on Harry to respond thoughtfully yet decisively. The global audience became an unseen participant in the unfolding drama, their interpretations shaping narratives, influencing perception, and complicating the already fraught emotional landscape. In this environment, every decision carried amplified consequences, and every reaction could be scrutinized for intent, sincerity, and impact. The threat of legal action, while rooted in personal grievance, also reflects the complex intersection of emotion, strategy, and public responsibility that defines Harry's approach. It signals a refusal to tolerate perceived violations, a protective stance toward his wife and family, and a strategic assertion of agency within a context where personal and public spheres are inseparably intertwined. Advisors reportedly emphasized the importance of clarity, precision, and careful timing in any legal or public response, recognizing that missteps could exacerbate tensions or create unintended consequences. By the end of the initial period following William's disclosure, Harry's emotional state was described by sources as a mix of determination, frustration, and protective vigilance. He had made it clear that he would not allow perceived injustices or betrayals to go unchecked, signaling both to his brother and to the palace staff that his response would be measured, intentional, and potentially consequential. The combination of personal emotion, legal consideration, and public awareness created a charged environment in which every choice was critical and every action would be scrutinized. As the palace and the public watched closely, the narrative continued to evolve, revealing the profound challenges of balancing family loyalty with personal integrity, public perception with private grievance. Harry's shock, while initially emotional, transformed into a deliberate strategic response, setting the stage for the unfolding conflict between brothers and the broader ramifications for the royal family. The tension, already palpable, was only beginning to escalate, promising further revelations, confrontations, and decisions that would define the trajectory of this unprecedented scandal. In the following chapters, we will examine the escalation of this conflict in detail, including Harry's legal strategy, the palace's internal crisis management, and the broader social and media reactions that continued to amplify the stakes. Viewers will gain insight into the personal, legal, and public dimensions of the story, understanding not only the emotional impact on Harry but also the strategic calculations that shaped the unfolding drama. The moment Prince Harry began contemplating legal action against his own brother, the dynamics within Buckingham Palace shifted dramatically. This was no longer a matter of personal betrayal alone. It had evolved into a potential legal and institutional crisis. Legal advisors, long accustomed to handling media scrutiny and ceremonial duties, now found themselves in uncharted territory. The intersection of family conflict, public exposure, and potential litigation created a situation that required both precision and delicacy. For Harry, the decision to consider a lawsuit was not taken lightly. It represented a profound assertion of boundaries, a declaration that even within the highest echelons of royalty, there were lines that could not be crossed without consequences. Harry's legal team reportedly began by conducting a comprehensive review of the facts, tracing the timeline of events from the alleged incident to William's disclosure. Every phone call, private meeting, and piece of correspondence was analyzed for relevance and potential evidentiary value. Lawyers explored the possibility of defamation claims, emphasizing that the disclosure of intimate, and allegedly misleading details about Meghan Markle and the alleged palace encounter could constitute harm to reputation and emotional well-being. Sources suggest that the legal strategy also considered the broader implications of family dynamics, weighing the likelihood of reconciliation against the potential need for formal judicial intervention. This was not merely a technical analysis. It was an exploration of personal ethics, family loyalty, and public perception. Inside the palace, advisors and staff watched with growing concern. Legal considerations introduced a new layer of tension into the already charged environment. Discussions shifted from private damage control to strategic legal planning. Courtiers and aides were suddenly tasked with balancing discretion against the urgency of preparing for potential legal ramifications. Every statement, every internal communication, and every action taken by the staff became scrutinized through the lens of both familial loyalty and potential courtroom evidence. The palace, accustomed to centuries of protocol and decorum, now faced the unprecedented challenge of navigating a legal conflict between two senior royals, a situation that risked destabilizing both internal cohesion and public confidence. Publicly, the notion that Harry might sue William captured attention almost immediately. Headlines speculated about the unprecedented nature of the conflict, framing it as a modern-day family feud with legal stakes. Social media platforms buzzed with debate. Some argued that Harry had every right to protect his wife and his privacy, while others suggested that taking legal action against a sibling could irreparably damage familial bonds. In this environment, every potential move by either brother carried the weight of public judgment. Advisors reportedly emphasized the importance of measured responses, cautioning that hasty or emotional decisions could exacerbate the conflict and produce unintended consequences. The legal threats were grounded in multiple potential claims. Defamation was central. The public exposure of intimate and allegedly false or misleading information about Meghan Markle could constitute reputational harm. Additionally, privacy concerns played a significant role, as Harry's legal team explored whether William's disclosures violated expectations of confidentiality within the palace, particularly regarding matters that were meant to remain within the family. Sources indicate that advisors also considered tortious interference, emotional distress, and other civil remedies as part of a comprehensive strategy. Each potential claim was weighed not only for legal viability but for its impact on family relationships, public perception, and the monarchy's broader image. The emotional context of the lawsuit cannot be overlooked. For Harry, the legal threat was not merely about winning a case. It was about asserting personal dignity, protecting Meghan, and establishing clear boundaries with his brother. Friends and confidants describe intense discussions in which Harry weighed the symbolic value of legal action against the risk of further inflaming family tensions. The deliberations were complex. Harry needed to demonstrate that the alleged betrayal was serious enough to merit formal recourse, while simultaneously considering the long-term implications for his relationship with William and for public perception of the royal family. The emotional and strategic stakes were inseparable, creating a high-pressure environment in which every decision mattered. Inside Buckingham Palace, the legal threat intensified internal discussions. Senior aides and advisors, who had previously focused on ceremonial duties and media strategy, now found themselves engaged in crisis management. Security protocols were reviewed, communications were carefully monitored, and contingency plans for public appearances were reassessed. Every public engagement had to be coordinated with legal considerations in mind, ensuring that statements, gestures, and interactions did not inadvertently compromise the emerging legal strategy. Staff members described a palpable tension in the palace atmosphere, a sense that even routine activities were now suffused with potential legal implications. The potential lawsuit also raised questions about precedent and institutional implications. While family disputes are not uncommon in public life, the combination of legal action, sibling rivalry, and royal visibility is extraordinarily rare. Legal scholars and royal historians weighed in, noting that a formal case between senior royals could set a precedent for how private grievances are managed within the monarchy. It could influence public expectations of accountability, privacy, and the resolution of familial conflicts at the highest level. For Harry, pursuing legal action was not only a personal choice but a decision with far-reaching consequences for the institution itself. Media scrutiny intensified as speculation about the lawsuit spread. Analysts dissected every reported detail, from the alleged seduction attempt to the nature of William's disclosures and Harry's potential claims. Headlines highlighted the unprecedented nature of the scenario: a royal family embroiled in a legal conflict with emotional, institutional, and global ramifications. Social media discussions ranged from moral arguments to legal analysis, with every tweet, post, and comment reinforcing the public perception of an escalating feud. For advisors and staff, managing both the legal and media aspects became a critical priority, requiring coordination, careful messaging, and strategic foresight. At the same time, Harry's consideration of legal action forced him to confront a range of personal and relational questions. What was the ultimate goal? Reconciliation, restitution, public vindication, or a combination of all three? How would pursuing legal action affect Meghan's public image and her own relationship with the palace? How could he navigate a situation in which every move, public or private, could have cascading consequences? These questions underscored the complexity of the decision-making process, highlighting the intersection of personal loyalty, legal strategy, and public accountability that defines life at the highest levels of royalty. In private conversations with close confidants, Harry reportedly expressed a mixture of frustration, determination, and anxiety. Friends describe long discussions in which he weighed emotional justice against practical outcomes, considering how legal action could protect his family while also acknowledging the potential strain on his relationship with William. The legal threat, in this context, emerges as both a personal assertion of dignity and a strategic maneuver, signaling that boundaries have been crossed and that serious measures may be required to address them. It is both defensive and proactive, reactive and preemptive, a calculated response to a deeply personal betrayal. The palace, meanwhile, faced the daunting task of preparing for every eventuality. Contingency plans for public appearances, communication strategies, and internal protocols were updated in real time. Senior advisors worked closely with legal counsel to ensure that any public statements, engagements, or movements did not inadvertently compromise Harry's potential case or the monarchy's broader reputation. Every action, from ceremonial duties to personal interactions, was filtered through the lens of legal and strategic implications, creating an atmosphere of heightened tension and vigilance throughout the institution. Ultimately, the threat of a lawsuit represents a defining moment in the relationship between the two brothers. It crystallizes the personal, legal, and public stakes of the alleged seduction incident, highlighting the intersection of family loyalty, institutional responsibility, and individual agency. For Harry, it is an assertion of boundaries, a protective measure for Meghan, and a strategic maneuver to navigate a complex web of interpersonal and public pressures. For the palace and the monarchy, it signals the need for careful management of both private grievance and public perception, emphasizing the delicate balance between personal relationships and institutional integrity. As we move into the next chapter, the focus will shift to the broader palace response and the unfolding internal crisis. Viewers will gain insight into how Buckingham Palace navigated this unprecedented legal and familial tension, the strategies employed by advisors, and the human dynamics that continued to shape the story. The narrative will explore the delicate balance of loyalty, discretion, and reputation management, setting the stage for further escalation and revelation. Within hours of the threat of legal action becoming known, the entire machinery of Buckingham Palace ground into an uneasy motion. What had begun as a rumor of a personal conflict now morphed into an institutional crisis unlike anything in recent memory. The palace, with its centuries-old traditions and layers of protocol, is built to withstand scandal. Yet this situation was different. It was internal, intimate, and explosive. The two most visible brothers of the monarchy, once the public face of unity, were now on opposite sides of a potential legal war. Senior courtiers moved swiftly, calling emergency meetings in offices that still bore portraits of past monarchs who had weathered wars and abdications. Papers were shuffled, phones rang incessantly, and aides debated how to balance family privacy against public expectation. Everyone knew that one misstep could turn a family quarrel into a constitutional question. The private secretaries for both princes were summoned. Notes from legal counsel were circulated under strict confidentiality. The Royal Communications Office drafted a holding statement that said nothing yet aimed to reassure. It was an old trick of the institution by time through silence, but this time the silence felt dangerous. Behind closed doors, the Queen's advisors, now answering to the King, struggled to comprehend the scope of what they faced. The new monarch had barely established his rhythm as sovereign, and already his son's feud was threatening to overshadow his reign. Courtiers whispered about contingency plans, fearing that public confidence could falter if the dispute deepened. The king himself, according to insiders, maintained composure but was furious that the family's private issues had become a matter of national debate. Tradition demanded unity, yet what he saw was fragmentation. Outside the palace gates, journalists gathered in clusters, cameras ready, awaiting any hint of official comment. News vans lined the mall, their lights illuminating the gates late into the night. Every move from within the palace was interpreted as a signal. A car leaving, a light in a specific window, the arrival of a legal courier. In the age of instant communication, even the smallest action could ignite speculation. Social media brimmed with theories and insider sources. For many Britons, the royal family's drama had become both a spectacle and a reflection of how even the most powerful families could fracture.